I turned 30 a few months ago, and here are the life lessons and kind of harsh truths I learned over the last years that I wish I could tell my younger self. This is part 2, actually. We already covered half of it in last week's episode. This is why we're diving in right away with life lesson number 16, which I seriously wish I could scream at my younger self. And it's, don't be afraid to be seen trying. I seriously cannot tell you how many things I didn't do that I actually would have loved to try and was dreaming about. But of course, it's always the same. It's always this fear of, what are people going to think? Are they going to judge me? Is this going to be weird? And it's this huge fear of other people actually seeing us try something new. Also, because I think so often we then also approach it with this super high expectation of, if I try it, it also has to work out. It has to be successful, because otherwise it's going to be even more embarrassing. And of course, when we have all these thoughts, we are talking ourselves out of it, because then it's like, okay, the risk is simply too huge, because what if it fails? And of course, yes, it can totally fail, but this is something I have learned for myself, is that you are still gonna win so much from it. And a fail is actually still a win, because you've been growing, you've been learning, you've been experiencing. This could be anything, right? It could be starting a new project, starting a new job, a new hobby, an adventure, like going on a trip around the world or anything. Trying is so cool. People who try new things are the coolest people in the world, and they're so inspiring. And I'm sure when you think about it, you're going to agree with me. When you see someone who's doing something new and taking a risk and just not caring at all what anyone is going to think of it, it's so inspiring and it's just so cool. And you're like, wow, I've been really trying to tell myself that so much whenever I've been falling into kind of that trap of talking myself out of it and thinking, maybe I actually don't even really want it that much, to be like, it's so cool. It's so cool. And no one is going to think it's cringe. People are going to think this is actually really super nice. And even if they don't think that, who cares? Because what you can get out of it is so much more important than what anyone would ever think about it. And coming back to the whole point about having these high expectations towards ourselves, that it needs to be super successful, this leads us to life lesson number 17, which has been the realization for me to redefine, what does it even mean that it is successful? Of course, we're just kind of really trained to see success as earning a lot of money, high status on social media, high views, a lot of likes, a lot of followers. Like, this have just become kind of our measures for success. And it's been so interesting for me, especially also being in social media and working with it, to realize that I remember so clearly when I had, I think, around maybe 5,000 followers or so. I was following this girl who I thought was super inspiring. I loved her content. And around that time, I think she had maybe 50,000 followers. And I remember how in my mind, I was like, oh my God, I wish this could be me. I wish this could be my life and to have that. And the moment I had 50,000 followers myself, I remember just having this realization, okay, wow, I really don't feel that different to when I had 5,000 followers. And it's not really changing my happiness at all. Of course, I was proud and it was exciting. It was super cool and just really nice to experience. But that's a moment, right? That's like one moment. And then you immediately get used to it and you feel the exact same you did when you had 5,000. Because then, of course, the next goal is 100,000 or 200,000 and so on. And it always goes from there. And it was super eye-opening for me that real success to me, it's just not of how it looks from the outside, but so much more about, do I actually enjoy this? Does this bring me genuine joy and fulfillment? And also, does it bring any value to anyone else? Because that in turn, of course, also fulfills you so much more when you also see that you can maybe have a positive impact on someone else. And that's probably also just the coolest thing of all of them. And that has nothing to do with any of these other kind of superficial outer factors. Oh my God, life lesson number 18 is seriously such an important one. It's to not trust your brain before your period. Isn't it insane how we can be literally like completely different persons, whether we are before our period or whether we are before ovulation, just how different our brain works and what hormones actually do to our body and our brain. And I'm just like speechless sometimes what my brain really does to me before having my period, about how I'm talking myself down, how all of a sudden everything seems horrible, and how I'm doubting myself so much and just like, oh my God, this was the worst idea ever. And what am I even doing in my life? And just feeling like the world is going under for no real reason, right? And then you had your period and all of a sudden it's like, I feel great. Life is great. Let's do this. Let's go. It's just crazy switch that flips. Just these insane up and downs. And therefore, I've been really making sure to tell myself when I can hear these thoughts coming up and just, it's just so irrational also and just erratic sometimes, to be like, this is not you. This is not you. This is going to pass. You're soon going to be back to normal. And we're just going to try and ignore this now. Or maybe also trying to, for example, then do things where you know you kind of really need to be super on top and really also feel good about yourself, to plan them more around the time of your ovulation, and then just maybe taking a step back during the luteal phase. And this of course brings us to this whole topic of cycle syncing, which is definitely something I want to dive in so much more. And it reminds me of a comment someone made under my video 2 episodes ago, which was about the 8 habits of the healthiest women in the world, where someone commented that the healthiest women in the world don't have a 9 to 5, which I couldn't agree more, because our life is really built around the male cycle, which is a daily cycle and not a monthly cycle. And so for men, it works great to have just the same rhythm every day. But for women, it simply doesn't, because the first half and the second half of our cycles are just so crazy different in our energy levels, how we feel, our thoughts, our mood, everything, right? But anyways, let's keep this for a special episode where it could also be super nice to have a guest on to really learn everything we can about cycle syncing. Life lesson number 19 is about a book that changed my perspective on life so much. I really loved it. I would highly recommend for you to read it. It's called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And I, of course, don't want to give too many spoilers now, but I have to tell you just a little bit what it's about, because it's this woman called Nora who is living with so many regrets. She's looking at her life and she just feels like she did everything wrong. She took all the wrong decisions and feels miserable. And then she gets the chance, this is a fictional book, she gets the chance to live her life based on just making some decisions differently. And then we get to see how her life unfolds just based on these few things she did differently. And it's so eye-opening, because I think we can all relate with these thoughts of, I wish I would have done this differently, or what would have happened if I, for example, wouldn't have taken that job and another job, or if I wouldn't have moved to that city or another city, kind of like these huge life-changing decisions, or also small decisions. And of course, also having sometimes really just deep regrets where we're like, I feel like my life would have been so much better without knowing, because obviously we don't know. And it turns out in the book that none of the decisions actually lead to a better outcome, because you just never know what else happens, because maybe the first thing that happens is shit, but you never know what comes after and what comes from that. Maybe something so much better that you wouldn't have had if you would have taken a different decision. We just really do not know. So there is no point in beating ourselves up over certain things. And of course, this is so much easier said than done. Coming back to one of the life lessons of last week's episode, of just having this very deep trust that life is always working for you, and that you're guided and protected and you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And that if I would have taken a different decision, I would be in a much worse place than I am now. And lucky me that I am where I am now. And if it's something that really bothers me, just taking it as a driving force for my decisions moving forward, and just taking it as a learning. But letting go of that thought that things would be better, because trust me, they wouldn't. One thing I've been hearing a lot, or also been asked about the most, is how my husband and I have been able to move so much and just be not afraid of moving places, leaving our home, and trying out so many different things, because we definitely have in the last years. Of course, one very important factor was that it was the two of us. Everything is always easier when you're two and when you're not doing it alone. So I also definitely have to say, moving somewhere else is definitely so much more challenging alone. But something both of us have realized is that it always feels so scary before you do it. And then once you've done it, it still also does feel scary and it still feels uncomfortable. And in the beginning, you're always like, oh my God, was this the wrong decision? What are we even doing here? Are we completely crazy? Because here's the thing. Our brain is wired to protect us and not to fulfill us. So whenever we put ourselves in situations that we're not used to and that our brain just doesn't know and that it's not familiar with, it's immediately seen as danger because our brain just wants to protect us and keep us in safety. So anything that's unfamiliar is scary. And that's also why once you had a big change, it's going to take some time for you to feel good about it. Even though it's something maybe you've been dreaming about for super long and you really, really wanted it, and it's something super cool, it might still feel shit in the beginning. And you might still question, like, what the hell did I do? This feels so wrong. And the only reason it feels wrong is because you are not used to it. And you're going to see that after a while, once it's become familiar and arrived and gotten used to it, it feels completely normal and it feels great. So that's at least how it's been for us, that whenever we left somewhere and moved somewhere new, it took some time to just get used to it. And we've been questioning ourselves so much. But then once we settled in, we were like, wow, this was the best decision ever, most of the times. And keeping that in mind is just really important, that it will always feel scary until it feels familiar. And we need to kind of overcome this time where it does feel super scary and remind ourselves that we just need to get used to it and our brain just needs to acclimatize. And it only wants to protect us. So we kind of really need to force ourselves to do the things that fulfill us. Oh, I could get so upset thinking about life lesson number 21, because I wish I could have told this, especially my younger self when I was like in my early 20s, to never allow anyone to make you feel bad about prioritizing your health. I had decided to stop drinking alcohol. I set myself this goal of I'm gonna not drink for minimum 1 whole year, mainly because I hated how I was feeling the days after I'd been drinking alcohol, not just physically, but especially mentally. I always had the worst, I think there's a name for it, like hangover depression or alcohol depression or something like that, that I would just literally feel so sad, so demotivated and so depressed in the minimum 1 or 2 days after I'd been drinking alcohol. And those days were just really lost for me because I couldn't really do anything. I was just feeling so shit and so awful about myself that I was like, no more, I don't want this anymore. And it was right when I had started my master's degree in Copenhagen. And this first week was, of course, this party week and getting to know everyone and just drinking a lot. And I remember how many people were so weird about me not drinking and just saying also quite offensive things like you're so boring and just really making me feel so shit about it, that I felt so uncomfortable. And the good thing is I was still sticking with it, but I felt so bad about it, which is so crazy. And I could get really so upset about it. If there's anything you do for your health, other people should respect that. And I've been working so much the last years on building up that internal strength of not caring what anyone thinks about it, which especially as a very big people pleaser and just also I used to be such an insecure person, for me was so challenging to find that strength in myself, to be like, you know what, I don't give a shit what anyone thinks about it. I'm doing this for myself. And I feel like there's so many more situations where it can just be so tricky and where people are just so annoying. I think, for example, also in office settings when there's someone's birthday and there's a cake, and when you're trying to avoid sugar and you're like, thank you, I don't want any, where people immediately are so weird and immediately you're the person who has an eating disorder. And it's just so crazy because those people should actually feel ashamed of making you feel that way, because I think it's one of the most amazing things you can do for yourself is taking care of your health, because it's the most important thing we have and we should prioritize it over anything. And therefore, I'm telling you, don't ever let anyone make you feel bad about any decision you take in life in general, but especially if it has to do with your health. Talking about health, life lesson number 22, I'm super sorry. This is such an annoying one, but I still feel like I need to say it, and it's to stop using perfume. It's unfortunately really so bad for our health. And the craziest thing about it, though, is that perfume and fragrance is handled as a trade secret. So manufacturers don't have to say what exactly is in the fragrance and the perfume. And it could literally be any kind of chemical that can be so toxic, and they literally do not have to tell us because it's a secret. Isn't that so crazy that essentially we have no idea what we are putting on our bodies, and there are unfortunately just so many studies that show how bad perfume and fragrance is, especially for our hormones. It's so endocrine disrupting, but also what I think is so important to know, it can have a really strong impact on our nervous system, which is crazy. We think it's something so nice and it smells so good, but it can, for our nervous system, be so overstimulating and raising our cortisol. And for example, essential oils, on the other hand, have the opposite effect. So they have a calming effect on our nervous system, and therefore switching perfume, for example, with essential oils is an amazing thing to do. But by now there actually are, of course, also clean and healthy alternatives to perfume. But to be honest, I haven't really tried any yet, so I can't really give a recommendation. I've just been really cutting it out completely. I've also been really trying my absolute best to avoid it in washing detergent, cleaning products, makeup, hair care, and so on. And wow, it's such a challenge because it's literally in everything. But keeping those things in mind, also, for example, keeping in mind how much you're increasing your toxic load on the body by using perfume, especially for our liver, which is already working so hard on detoxifying. And the more products we use, the harder we just make it, and the more toxins we store in the body. And just overall, this is so bad for our health. So yeah, I know it sucks because it's of course such a nice thing, but cutting it out and finding an alternative is one of the best things we can do. And I'm gonna give you an update once I do find a good, clean, healthy perfume that is also nice. So I'll let you know. But of course, if you know any, if you're using anything, then let us know. So definitely leave it in the comments. Life lesson number 23 is something I've been trying to practice really hard. It's to be as clear as you possibly can about what exactly it is that you want. There's this super nice analogy of if you go into a bakery, you're not going to be like, I think I want something sweet. Can I maybe have something that's sweet, maybe a bit salty, maybe it has blueberries or maybe chocolate, I don't know. You know what? Just give me whatever you have. You're not going to say that, right? You're going to be like, hello, can I please have one blueberry muffin? That's going to be your order. And that's exactly how we want to communicate with the universe. We want to be so crystal clear in telling the universe what it is that we want, because otherwise, how does it know what to give us? And to make this maybe a little less spiritual and more neuroscience-y, our brain has to all day long filter out what actually really matters, because we are confronted with so many things every single day, and the brain's main task is to kind of show us the things and filter out the stuff that is relevant to us. And so we want to make sure that the brain knows exactly what is relevant to us. And there's this famous example. If you decide to buy this very specific red car, all of a sudden, that's exactly what you see everywhere. You see this red car everywhere. And it's not that it hasn't been there before. It has, but you just didn't see it because you weren't paying attention to it, because it wasn't on your mind. You weren't focusing on it. But now, because you kind of like primed your brain on it, it's all you see everywhere. So we want to make sure that we are so crystal clear what it is that we want, because then all of a sudden we see opportunities we wouldn't see otherwise. So that is really why it's so absolutely crucial to be as clear as you possibly can about what it is that you want. Life lesson number 24 is for whenever you feel super shit, or whenever something bad happened and you feel like your world is over or things are just horrible and it feels like this is never gonna pass and life is gonna suck from now on, and you've just kind of really lost perspective of the bigger picture, to remind yourself that nothing lasts forever. It sounds so simple, but there is a saying, this too shall pass, and it is literally what I'm saying to myself whenever I feel just so shit and sad or whatever, to remind myself that this is not gonna last forever. This is gonna pass. It has to pass. I have to get through this now, and it will be so much better than I can imagine right now. I can't see it right now, but it will be. And it's just unfortunately part of life, and we have to get through it. But just really keeping that in mind, it definitely really helps me so much to get through the hard times and to know that this is not gonna last forever. Number 25 is definitely one of my favorites, and something so fascinating. I don't know if you've heard about this study where they wanted to see how happy people are before they go on vacation, while they're on vacation, and then after their vacation. And what they found is that people are the happiest before the vacation, because looking forward to things releases dopamine in our brain. It makes us feel more alive, more motivated, and just more excited. And that is why it's so important to always make sure you have something to look forward to. And it doesn't have to be something big like a vacation or a trip or an adventure. It can be literally as small as a cup of coffee or talking to your friend, going for a walk, watching your favorite show. Just these small things, making sure you have them and making sure you think about them to always have something that excites you a little bit, that makes you look forward to something, surprise yourself. Just small things are also big things that you can look forward to. Number 26 is getting a little bit sad, but something I've learned is that when something really terrible happens to someone close to you, it's totally okay to not know what to say to them. Because oftentimes, honestly, there isn't also really anything you can say or nothing you can say that makes it better. But what is not okay is to not be there, because I think we really have no idea how much it means to someone who is at their absolute lowest to just know that you're there and that you think of them and that you support them. And just thinking about myself, whenever I felt really sad or really, really low, getting a message from a friend who tells me they're thinking of me and that they're always there if there's something I need, it means the world. It means so much. And that's definitely become something I also really want to prioritize for my friends and the people that are close to me, to remember that it's not about knowing what to say to them or have the best advice or tips, because you don't want to have tips. You don't want to have advice when you're feeling really, really sad. All you want is knowing that someone is there for you and is holding space for you and validates your feelings. You don't want to hear, why don't you try this? Or have you thought about this? And so remembering that your support is all that someone needs who is at their lowest. And I know we're just all so busy in our lives, right? And there's so much going on. And it's so easy also to maybe forget about telling someone you're thinking of them, or telling yourself, I'll do it later, I'll do it tomorrow, and thinking about it in your mind. But the other person doesn't know that, right? They don't know that you're thinking about them. So I think it's one of the most beautiful things you can actually do for other people is to tell them that you're thinking about them. Something else I've been trying to do is to spend time alone, which a few years ago felt so uncomfortable to me. I literally hated doing things alone. It felt so weird. And now I absolutely love it. I don't want to say that I prefer it over doing things with someone else. Maybe in some situations I actually do. I think it can be so powerful to do things alone, especially solo trips. That's something I started to absolutely love doing. And I felt like it's always been so empowering and just so nice to spend time with myself, to really learn to be okay with myself and to like being with myself. Because at the end of the day, we are with ourselves always, forever. We're more with ourselves than we will ever be with anybody else. And so I think it's really important to work on being with someone you really like to be with, that you're someone you like to spend time with. And of course, going on a whole trip alone can maybe be quite a lot. But for example, going on a solo dinner date or going to the cinema alone or just doing small things alone already, I think can make a huge difference and make you connect to yourself so much more, because also all of a sudden you really create so much more awareness of what is going on in your mind. And I think you just really get to know yourself so much more and so much closer. So that has definitely really been life-changing for me. Life lesson number 28 is a bit of a funny one, but if you want to learn or improve a language, one of the best ways is to watch The Bachelor. So, you know, the TV show, The Bachelor or Bachelorette, I think it is in quite a lot of countries now. So hopefully it's in the language you want to learn, because I noticed such a huge difference with my Danish. So I started learning Danish a few years ago because my husband is actually Danish, by the way. Do you think he learned German? He had it, I think, 4 years in school, and he can say nothing. Like, he doesn't speak a word of German, and he's also not really learning it. Okay, I don't want to bash him here, but I am a bit upset about it because I started learning Danish, and I've just noticed the biggest difference when we started watching the Danish Bachelor and Bachelorette, because the thing is that the conversations they're having are just perfect for learning the language because the conversations are not that deep, right? And I noticed that I felt so much more comfortable talking after we've been watching a few episodes. Okay, I actually quickly have to tell you a bit of a funny story because a few years ago, I dated a guy for like 3 months. It was a total, situationship. We dated for like 3 months and then it sort of faded out. And then a few weeks later, he was on the German Bachelorette. And the craziest thing is that he actually won the show. And it was the weirdest thing, when you've just been dating someone and then they're on that show and you see how they're dating someone else. And it was so weird. It was a bit funny, but also just so weird. Anyways, just a funny little story. I love number 29, which is to compliment strangers. I think it's one of the most fun things you can do, and just seeing how happy it makes someone else. Because if I'm just thinking about whenever I receive a compliment from a stranger, I feel like it changes my whole day, and it's just immediately lifts up your mood, and it just makes you feel so good. It can feel super challenging, right? Especially towards a stranger, but I think just thinking about how happy it will make them is reason enough. Let's finish off with life lesson number 30. It's one of my favorite reminders to always keep in mind just how many amazing things are still waiting for you, how many amazing experiences, how many incredible people you are still going to meet. That's to me one of the craziest thoughts somehow, that there are still so many people out in the world that you haven't met yet that are so amazing and that will maybe be future lovers or future friends or your future children, just these thoughts of having people you haven't met yet that are probably gonna have such a huge impact on your life and that you're gonna love so much is one of the most beautiful thoughts ever, I think. And I'm gonna leave you with that. I really, really hope that you enjoyed this episode. Definitely let me know which of these life lessons maybe resonated with you the most, or any thoughts you have, any questions you have. I always really love to hear from you, and I'm just so grateful for any one of you who actually takes also time out of their day to leave a comment or to write me a message. It means so much more to me than you know, and I'm just really grateful and so happy to have you here. I can't wait to see you in next week's episode. Bye.